Okay, so I'll let you guys introduce yourselves briefly, Karen McManus and Sarah Zamora, and then I'll just start asking you questions. How does that sound?
I'm Karen McManus. I'm with Full Circle Farms in Longmont. We are a certified organic vegetable operation, and we've been selling to the school districts for about 4 years now.
I'm Sarah Leffler Zamora with Leffler Family Farms in Eaton, Colorado. Last year was our first year selling to an institution with farm to school, and we have just 5 acres. So
Okay, well, everybody, welcome. I'm going to ask these guys questions for about half an hour, and then we'll give you guys about 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll pass it over to Martha. So we had, I guess, as I chimed off in this morning's session about labor, we had some good discussion last workshop around labor, and wanted to ask both Karen and Sarah about the labor-saving practices in production that they find really helps them trim back cost, mitigate risk, and also crank out the volume needed in some of these markets. So what do you see on the Full Circle Farm and in your practices that are labor considerations?
I think that putting energy in the beginning of the season to help conserve that labor cost later in the season. So we're using things like plastic mulch on some of our crops, on the peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, and such, drip irrigation. Let's see, I've already blanked out what I said earlier.
It's fresh.
Yeah. I don't know, remind me, Adrian?
You were using some mechanical transplanters.
Oh, yeah. We definitely use mechanical transplanters. We use, our farm is all hand harvested. However, we do use a lot of tractor work in the beginning of the season, cultivating, tilling, and such, and transplanting. Some mechanical transplanting is done as well. Yeah, we're looking at mechanizing some things now that we see are just too cost prohibitive, like we need a green bean harvester. And one thing that I didn't mention in the last session is we do collaborate with other growers and certified organic growers in the area if they have machinery that maybe we need, like a pickle sorter. So we'll send our pickles down in bulk bins and have them sort for us so that we're not doing that by hand. Different things like that.
all right, one thing that's really helped us up our production is mechanized planting. We started out with an earthway planter, a little push planter with a hopper to help us get our red beets in more quantity. And we use a tractor planter for corn and for our beans. We're also working on modifying some old equipment, some old sugar beet equipment, to make it into a red beet planter so that we don't have to use the push earthway anymore. Also mechanized harvesting. We lease a combine for the beans, and then we use an off-site facility as well to process those beans. Big thing for us is to pick produce which lends itself nicely to our area. We pick sweet corn because a lot of field corn is grown in the area, so we know we can get our hands on a planter and other things that we might need. Same thing with red beets. Sugar beets do really well in the area, so we know it's good soil. We know we can find equipment. The dry beans, same thing. The off-site processing facility is huge for us because it allows us to stay within the safety regulations without having to make such a big upfront investment. Another thing would be to pick just a few vegetables. We grow a lot of vegetables, but for farm to school, we focus on just a couple things to go large scale with. It just really helps with fertilizer, with all machinery, everything, to not have so many different aspects. You can really streamline if you have just a couple items.
Some of those you mentioned earlier, you don't have to wash. Were those the considerations too?
Yeah, that for us, we don't have a washing facility yet, so the corn, it's husked, so if we sell it husked, we don't have to wash it, or if we just put it right into the boxes and ice it down, you don't have to wash it. The beans, the same thing, and storing the beans is easy because they're dry, and they also give us something to sell throughout the winter, so that's really nice because they last. Know your market, just to know what it is that they need, that the schools need. That helps a lot with knowing what to bid out. Securing sales in advance. Farm to school was the first time that we really did that, where before we planted, we knew that we were going to sell it, and that was really, really nice to not be trying to sell it in the middle of the season when we're busy harvesting and growing and things like that. And then being resourceful, that's what really pushed us, I guess, into full-time vegetable production, was giving up our idealistic ideas and just using the resources around us. Some examples, we built a greenhouse from all recycled materials. We used an old carport and recycled lumber. We had to buy the plastic new, but we put the whole thing together for about $400, which is a fraction of the cost of a new one. We worked with NRCS and we got a grant for a large hoop house, which is going to help with season extension and protection also of the crops. We are always looking for farm sales and auctions and reading the fence post and going on Craigslist. Even if it's not something that we need to buy right away, it's just nice to know where those resources are, so when it comes time, we have them available to us. And then my last thing on just being resourceful is to really partner with other farmers, attend meetings, and just work with your community. Really is helpful with producing more as well.
I want to layer on a little bit more in this labor discussion. We've had recently a focus group meeting here in northern Colorado. Karen attended it. We tried to pull some of you guys up from the Arkansas Valley to explore labor issues on produce operations. And what we're seeing in a lot of instances is challenges around recruiting and both retaining labor. And this is not one of our scripted questions we had worked on, but if you guys can think about in your operations, how do you go out and find these employees that have the skill set that you need, and what sorts of tactics do you use to keep them around during the year, that they don't split on you after 2 weeks, and then maybe next year they come back? How do you retain them? What strategies do you use?
We rely heavily on our farm manager, who has very good connections in the traveling migrant community. We have many of the same employees return year after year, and they're probably in Texas or Florida or California different times of the year. We rely heavily on our field crew leaders as well to keep those people in place. Otherwise, we are advertising on the local Hispanic radio station, and we're putting a sign on our fence in the beginning of the season, and people know to look for that sign. And, it might say show up on Thursdays between 8 and 9. And we usually get quite a few people coming to show up, and there's plenty of people out there that might show up and want the work, but whether they stay or not, we found that this last summer was probably the most difficult. They might have stayed a day or two, or they might have stayed a pay period, and then they just don't show up. And it was a very unreliable year for us on farm labor. So we generally don't advertise on Craigslist. We haven't had any luck with that. We just continue to speak to the workers that are really good workers on our farm and ask them to talk to their friends and see if maybe they'd like to come work as well. But it's been an issue and a struggle last year. I see that it's going to continue to be that way, and we're looking for new and different ideas on how to keep labor. We will give them a bonus at the end of the season if they've stayed with us the entire season, and we look for other incentives as well during the season that we can provide to make it a good working atmosphere for them, and a lot of communication between our farm manager and the workers. We collaborate with the local health department, so the health van comes out to the farm to provide that, and just looking for other things that might make their work experience on our farm good enough that they want to return year after year.
We're so small. Last year was the first year we really had to look for outside help. The first thing we did was look on Craigslist, and we found a young man that was home from college for the summer, and he helped us out 2 or 3 hours a day. And then when things got really busy in the fall, he had to go back to school. We also had another lady who, it was a sister of one of our CSA members, and she wanted to do some work share. We had never done anything like that before, so we tried it out. She came out with a couple of her young daughters and pulled a bunch of vegetables instead of weeds, and it was okay. It didn't last. They didn't come back again, so that wasn't real successful. And then our best option was a young man that we just found through talking to people in the community, and that had worked on farms before, and he had good experience, and so he was pretty much full-time with us once we got him on about mid-season or so. And like Karen said, since he does such a good job right away, we're like, okay, let's pay you $10 an hour, let's up your pay, let's give you a bonus, and just try to treat him well so he stays with us. And right now he's texting asking when we're going to get back to work because he wants to work. He helped a little bit this winter with chickens, with feeding our chickens, but that wasn't real work for him. He needs more. So.
Well, I think maybe as we get into Q&A, maybe you guys have questions on labor. I think it's, especially if you're a producer, a big issue for you. I want to roll through 2 other questions, and then I think we'll spin out to the audience for questions. So what infrastructure, practices, and materials do you find that you need to comply with the food safety requirements for farm-to-school sales? Those could be boxes, washing areas, pack-out standards, et cetera.
We didn't really have to change anything in our operation to be able to sell to the schools because we're already selling to some of the larger distributors and Whole Foods and such. So on our farm we have a pack house that has 3 coolers with different temperatures. We've got the hydro cooler so that we can cool down produce as it comes out of the field, and the conveyor belts to sort produce, which is really helpful. We already purchased boxes, brand new boxes in large quantities, so we were set there as well. As a small farmer, I know that there's some costs there involved, but for our farm, picking up a school account was another customer in the wholesale business. So we did, over the last few years, just on a wholesale level, we've increased our ice capacity. We put in a brand new ice machine in the ceiling, so it's dropping ice 24/7, and we don't have to be waiting for some small ice machine to be making ice for us any longer. We have a big box warehouse that we can keep all of our boxes in, and so it was really just an evolution of the farm itself and the business model, and so taking on a farm-to-school account fit right into that. We didn't have too many new costs involved.
Karen, would you mention too before you pass? You've used. We talked last session about employing or using pallets and forklifts and such. That's an addition.
Yeah. We have quite a few forklifts and pallet jacks and all those hand jacks and all those kinds of things on the farm now, and we've over the years have put more of the pack house area into concrete so we can quickly move around the areas. We have quite a few locations. We're spread up and down Highway 66 in Longmont there, so it's not just one central farm. So at any of the key locations we also have the forklifts there. We have a storage area for the boxes, so we're not having to run back and forth to get what we need at any given point in time. And we've bought a whole lot more equipment in the end is what we've done, and we utilize it where we need it. And we try to keep the key components on each farm so that we're not having to travel up and down the highway with them.
We really weren't completely equipped because we hadn't sold to institutions before. One thing we had to get for the first time was boxes, like standard size labeled wax boxes. And what I did for that is I worked it into the bid in the first place as part of the cost of the corn. Ice, I didn't really work into the bid, and that was a big expense. So an ice machine would be great. Maybe we'll find a used ice machine, but we were actually buying it at like grocery stores and gas stations. So that was a big expense. The off-site bean processing, that's one way that we get around not having a huge infrastructure yet. We have on the farm that we rent from, it's a bigger farm, so they provide us with a clean shed if we need to husk the corn. And we also have a cement pad and a pressure washer to wash out our trucks that haul the corn. We have lots of ideas for getting refrigeration, but we haven't done it yet. So hopefully this year we can get that in place.
In terms of relationships with these institutional buyers, these farm or the school buyers, what have you found to be key strategies and tactics working with them? How do you generate that rapport, times of the day to call, strategies of that nature?
During the day, I guess I just think school time hours as far as communicating, but I guess for me the big change was dedicating time to sitting at the desk to make the phone calls and emails and come to meetings. That was different and not really what I originally thought farming would be all about. I thought I'd be outside all the time, but it just wasn't the case. And being in communication too really helped as far as like the boxes. Our first delivery we made, we had them all in boxes of 4 dozen. Second delivery, they said, hey, we have this huge bin here. You can use it. Just put the corn in there. And it saved us a lot of money and a lot of resources. So I think just communicating as much as you can in a timely manner, just every day being on your email at some point is what helped us.
Have they pre-ordered in some instances where you know weeks in advance of delivery quantity and date?
I knew weeks in advance what we had won on the bid process, but later deliveries we made were just because we had excess product. So I would just send an email and say, hey, there's corn. It's going to be good for about 2 or 3 days. Do you want it? And yes, we do. And then they work with us on packaging and price and all of that. So.
Could I ask, Adrian, did you store dry beans and then deliver to the school just bit by bit?
Well, they're at the offsite facility. They're stored there, so we just go pick them up when we need them and take them directly to the schools.
Did you were able to make multiple deliveries?
Yes, that's right.
So that's a good way to extend your cash flow then.
Yes.
We see in some instances, I think in the St. Vrain Valley School District, huge refrigeration and storage capacity. So there may be variance by district to district to how much product they can store.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did RE6 and they have a lot of capacity for storage, which is awesome. They can freeze the corn, they can store everything, so.
Right. And the way that we we sell to the St. Vrain School District, and we worked our bids so that we knew that we were going to be delivering twice a week. Our farm is fairly close to the warehouse there. The buyer would email me several weeks in advance, probably 3 weeks in advance, to let me know what she needed that particular week. So mostly it was about organization on my end. I mean, I needed to dig that purchase order out in a timely manner, but I knew exactly what we needed to be selling and delivering to the school district several weeks in advance, and that was really, really helpful.
So there's a certain degree of planning for this delivery and some degree of quantity estimation, right? Of looking in the field and saying, I'm going to have this much product on this date. That is a skill set that may not be below the surface of what you guys are describing.
Yeah, but once again, it's about open lines of communication, because there were a couple of times, even though we're a medium-sized farm and have a fair amount of volume, there were times that I knew that I might be short on something. They were asking for so many boxes of cherry tomatoes, and I would just let them know. And they just appreciated knowing in advance, not when I got to the door with the delivery, and they would make adjustments where they needed to. The other thing was, just as far as fostering the relationships with the school districts, I always encourage my buyers to come out to the farm and take a farm tour, and it really gave the district buyers and nutrition service director a greater appreciation of what it took to get that food to their back door. I think they very much appreciated it, and they talked it up when they got back to school, so it was a great marketing piece for us as well.
And Karen, did you find the same as Sarah, that you could call St. Vrain, for example, and say you had excess product and you could move it?
Yes, and on the other side of that is that the school districts are willing and able to take your seconds, not your garbage, but your cucumbers that might not be straight, or things like that, which are difficult to sell at the wholesale level. And so we often would work out a lower price, but boy, what a great thing, because what else are you going to do with those? It's very helpful.
Okay, I can see we've stimulated lots of thought. So let me see. Let everybody raise your hand if you got a question. I can see where questions are. Okay, we only have one, so let's start over here.
I was just curious if you or anyone you know as a grower has developed a relationship with the district as far as internships, that next generation of farmers or career technical ed or the FFA program, as far as bringing those kids out to work on the farm, be involved in their education, fostering that set of skills in those kids that are, a lot of kids are really interested in work.
In my work, you probably heard me say I helped start the Greeley Farm to School program, and that first couple of years I actually went in as Farmer Karen in the classroom. I helped set up school gardens where the kids came out and planted their own gardens, and then that produce was used in the lunches. The kids were acquiring new tastes, and they were really excited to eat the beets and the kale and such because they helped grow them. So that was very, very good. And we've had some conversations just last year with St. Vrain School District. They want to do some farmers markets at some of the schools, and they also want to do some internships with some high school kids coming out to the farm. So we might see that happen this year. But yeah, that's a really important piece to it all.
We had kind of a unique situation that happened. It really wasn't any kind of formal thing, but one of our teachers in the high school was very interested and has really got some of the kids interested. Some of those kids, it wasn't a formal internship, it wasn't for credit or anything, but they worked on the local farms, quite diversified, making baked goods, eggs, produce. And instead of, I think they did pay the kids some in cash, but it was mainly in credit. And so the kids went with the mom and dad to the farmer's market, and they spent the money in credit for food for the family. And it was such a win-win because these were families who never shopped locally before. They always went to Walmart, and it was a great deal all the way around for the families and the students to have kind of a closed-loop experience.
Great.
I was just going to say, have either of you tried posting anything like on the Boulder sites or any type of farm-specific volunteer programs for work as far as labor, that people that would want to do something like that?
We, at Full Circle Farms, that model probably wouldn't work well for us. On a smaller farm, I know, and actually on some other large farms, I've seen it work quite well, but on our farm, we haven't done all that. We do get labor to work our farmers markets. We might post that on Craigslist, or often it's just word of mouth because a lot of people do want to work farmers markets, but not necessarily for the field work.
I see some producers in the Boulder County area advertising for farm labor, sometimes interns, sometimes the pay is not as high in the internship scenario, but they might advertise on the National Center for Appropriate Technologies, ATRA website. There's a listing in there by state for farm opportunities. Some of them are actually advertising on Craigslist and finding people that way. In terms of the longer term employee, some of the WOOF opportunities, at least in my experience when I did it 20 years ago in Europe, was more of like people wanting to have an agricultural experience, and they weren't necessarily skilled farm workers.
Yeah.
So, Kathleen?
So I throw this out to all of you guys. When I was up in Montrose at the Valley Food Forum, I got to listen in on a breakout group that talked about labor issues. And they focused exclusively, at least while I was hanging out there, on the H-2A program. Yeah, I heard some sniffles over there. I'm very curious how to make that program work, or how to make it not work against you.
So I would guess, I don't think either of you guys use H-2A. So these are temporary farm workers, a visa program. Often it's at scale. Do you guys in the back want to comment at all on that, of how to make H-2A more workable?
It's the only way to go, in my opinion.
So what would you do to change the programs to make, from hearing from many producers that you're having to pay too much, you're having to provide housing, you are having to advertise locally, there are a lot of hiccups.
I have to do all that. Yeah, I pay them a premium wage. I offer them housing, I offer them transportation, I take care of them. They come here for one reason, they come here to work. They'll work 1 day a week, they'll work 7 days a week, they'll work 12 hours a day, they'll work 15 hours a day. I don't have to worry about one of them not coming tomorrow because he's in jail. Excuse me. Because he's in jail or because he went out late last night and drank too much beer. They're there every day.
So the program,
It's an insurance policy is the way I look at it.
so the program as you view it now doesn't need any modifications?
The only modification it needs is the government needs to step out of it a little bit more. Homeland Security is involved in it. Makes it very hard.
I've heard the same. So how would they back out and make it better?
I'm not quite sure on that, but I'm sure there's several ways they could do it.
And Lynn, what we hear in a lot of instances with producers is there's some hesitancy to really talk a lot about it because people are trying to navigate a system that sometimes is broken and sometimes they may be found at fault in some of the ways they navigate it. So it's challenging sometimes to have that conversation.
So one of the things that I heard at the Valley Food Forum of the producers who were talking about this was that once, so I am completely naive in this, so I may be representing it wrong, but this is what I thought I heard them say, that they found themselves at times over-obligated, so they, asked for a worker or asked for a set of workers, and then it turned out that for whatever reason, their harvest, maybe they had hail damage or something, they didn't need as much, but they were still obligated to those workers. Does that sound right?
No, you're not obligated to them.
You're not?
No, if you, Mother Nature and act of God relieves you of all that.
So I wonder
So if we're in mid-season and they get a hailstorm, they can all get a bus ticket back. Now, if they come up here and you fail to work them, and there's no reason behind it other than you don't want to work them,
Then you're obligated.
then you're obligated to them.
So it sounds like you really need to know exactly how much labor you need.
Exactly.
I think that's one of the issues is forecasting the labor by the time you're buying the seed and with the time constraints. Sometimes that doesn't quite work for agriculture as much. But I think that one of the suggestions that group had was that that you can, is it only 90 days before or something like that when you are obligated? It's an issue of forecasting, planting your crop, not knowing you've got the labor. And
That's an
then,
obligation on their side of it, not on
Yeah.
mine.
and then apparently now there's really no skin in the game on the workers' part that you have to pay the consulate fees as well now to bring them, and then they're prescribed the wage, the hourly wage.
Yeah, it is, but it's also, the way I look at it is an insurance policy. You have to pay your auto insurance regardless if you wreck your car this year or not, you still pay it.
Yeah.
This is an insurance policy, you have labor there 7 days a week. The other thing I use a lot of is the prison system. Without the prison system and without the H2A system, there would not be a vegetable farmer in Copeland County.
What's the proportion you use of the contract prison labor versus H2A?
Well, my H2A guys are here every day, so we use them daily.
Okay.
The prisoners come in to get us over the hump, being when we're hoeing peppers or something, it's a slow, meticulous process. So we need more labor force. So we'll bring the prisoners in, 30, 40, 50 of them, whatever we can get a hold of, for a week or so, to get us through the spots where my H2A guys can't handle.
And how much lead time do you have to give the corrections institution and that you need?
We have a tight relationship with them. It's usually a few days, a week at the most. And of course, the better you can, the further out you can tell them you need them, the better off it is for them. They're trying to juggle about 12 farms out there with about 60 girls. So, it's easier if you can tell them you need them.
So it sounds like you guys at your scale and your operation are managing that risk with labor pretty well. It seems like it's between those two pools of.
We are, but there's some issues. Homeland Security is trying to take our H2A guys away from us, and there's a congressman up here somewhere that's trying to take our prison labor away too. And then there's also there's a bill going through Congress right now that's going to stop your child labor laws. So taking your kids out of school to go work on their farm for internship ain't going to happen until they're 18.
Yeah, the Department of Labor is trying to say you can't have kids driving a tractor till they're 18, and this kind of
And all the
stuff.
safety.
That's a huge issue for farm families.
I think it's unless they're family members, right?
Right.
Right,
But I think there are added safety measures, even if you're a family member, like
last it was, like 6 hours and there was nothing
Exactly.
back. And so trying to say, we really need H2A to stay is about, they're happy with their workers and that kind of thing. It's just some of the level of the detail, the regulation that if you're going to transport, you have to have a chauffeur's license, you have to, I mean, the level of detail is pretty amazing with some of it and the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So, but overall, they're really happy with the quality of workers that they get, and I think they can get the same guys back and all that kind of stuff. But they're trying to show to the congressman that we really rely on this work. We need this program to stay viable. We need some more flexibility in it. We'd like to be able to share, because you're bringing people, say, to the mountains for a very seasonal job. Our ski areas have the opposite season. We'd like to be able to share, you know, and have some flexibility, keep those people here longer, stuff like that. You know, when you're dealing with a federal regulation, it's pretty daunting to have some impact on it.
Yeah, so there needs to be, I think, probably some advocacy on behalf of the ag sector to lobby politicians to make this happen. This, you know, extension and us public employee folk can't do that type of work. We can't wade into politics with your tax dollars. So that's a whole other bailiwick. You know, we can inform some of the issues, but we can't really wade into it. So, what other question? We know that's a big one. What other questions do we have around farmer school? Well, let's keep talking about H2A then.
Or maybe not.
And you women there in some of the county area, you guys understand that this whole H2A thing is where you have to muster a huge quantity of workers, where you might need 300 people to show up on a day. So some of these smaller farm operations that like Sarah's dealing with, and a lot of the clientele I work with, it's a mixed match. They would never pursue H2A because they just don't need that type of quantity. So in some instances, we find related labor issues around some of the same phenomenon where people have dreamed that they want to work on a farm, and you may encounter this in Summit County. They come out for a couple of days, and they're not an effective farm worker, they're not an efficient farm worker, even though they really like to do it. You guys see that in your neck of the woods?
It's definitely a challenge. I work, well, currently in Alma, County, for a friend who has a greenhouse operation. She does not food but ornamentals, but she saw that she's growing, you know, so she's in her 5th year and she's got her client base, and so she just ran into the issue of she almost had too many workers, not doing enough, and she wasted a lot of time training people that ultimately in the end just kind of fizzled out, and she couldn't rely on them, and you know, they went on vacation here, and it was just kind of like, you know, you're getting paid $10 an hour, so it's kind of dispensable to a lot of people up there, and so she realized that in, like, right now, she's willing to pay people more to come back each year, you know, like, I've been with her for a couple of years, and she's a friend of mine, so she's willing to pay my gas and give me a few extra, you know, whatever to make it work, so that she can focus more on being the grower and on dealing with the logistics of, you know, getting deliveries on time and getting things organized and stuff, and so that's what she's battling, and she saw a real big issue with that this year, that she's gonna, you know, work on for next year, so.
Does she find that she really wants to have a fewer number of very good employees instead of a whole lot of people who are marginal?
Absolutely, yeah, because she'd come around and be like, why is there 5 people working on this thing? And, you know, if you were here before, you know that you don't need 5 people to do this project, but a couple of people that were experienced would be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go work on this while you're doing that. And yeah, she definitely has, yeah.
A lot of the initiatives that I'm involved in are very much volunteer-based, with building the gardens and maintaining them, and it's really difficult because, you know, a 72-year-old man comes out, we want him there, but...
What tasks can you give them that are appropriate?
Yeah, which there's some 72-year-old men that can come out and work 15-hour days, you know, but some in Summit County. It's a struggle. It's like that story, Lewis the Hen, whatever.
The Little Red Hen.
Is it the Little Red Hen where, oh, you know, help me plant the
Yes,
seed,
yes, yes,
and nobody
yes.
has time to plant the seed, nobody has time to harvest it, but once the bread is made, everybody wants
They all went
piece
to the
of it.
farmer's market and sell the product.
Yeah, they don't realize people really don't understand, even when they're volunteering, that they're coming to work. It's work. Farming, I've gotten a lot of weird sunburns out in the fields. You know, working, you know, and it's unfortunate people don't realize that you're out there sweating.
To close this discussion, would you guys all agree that to some degree we're challenged now in the United States to find people who have that strong work ethic?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's a common thread that I'm hearing through many discussions. Okay, well, let's transition and segue over to Martha's segment of the program. Martha's got handouts.
Can't travel without handouts. So here we go. So let's start with that one. So what we're going to talk about now is from the farm gate to that point of sale, and if it is a farmer's market, if it's another institutional buyer, farm stand, and farm to school. And the example that I gave you, these spreadsheets really only look at 2 different market channels just to simplify. And I'll go through that in a minute. But if you look at just the marketing costs, so the variable costs associated with marketing, what are some of those considerations? And what we frequently see are that producers are not really keeping track of all these costs, not understanding what they are to be able to report them in the first place. And so what that means is you really can't evaluate what accessing a certain market channel, how remunerative it is for you. And then you don't know if you should really keep doing that or not. Because the last thing that we ever advocate is that people go out and lose money. So what we're trying to do is help everybody to be as profitable as they can. So what I'm going to do is just cover some of the bullets here on this first handout, and then we'll take a look at this spreadsheet, and I'll just walk you through that example a little bit, and we can chat about that. And if you have any questions, just interrupt me, because there's nothing formal about any of this, and hopefully our panelists will contribute to this discussion. So what I wanted to do was just call to your attention some of the elements that are really critical and are very dependent on the market channel that you're accessing. And the first one is labor. And I know we just talked a lot about labor, but if you think about how you use labor differently depending on if you're going to a farmer's market, if you're delivering to a farm-to-school program, if you've got a farm stand, think about where you're using labor in those marketing functions. And it's really different having someone who has to pack up, drive, sit in a farmer's market, reload, drive back to wherever the production site is versus making a delivery, for example, to a restaurant, to an institution, to a wholesale buyer. And so you still have that loading and drive time and delivery, but you don't have all that other cost involved in someone having to be there during the entire time of sale. And as we'll talk about in a bit, the other thing that comes with that then too is you do not always know that you're going to sell everything through some of those market channels. So there's a lot of inefficiency in that labor too. The spreadsheet that I'll walk you through really just looks at the costs of labor allocated to those different pieces that I mentioned. So, packing, driving, making the sale, and returning. And what I did is I looked at not only, there are your wage costs, there are also your payroll costs, which a lot of people kind of discount. And for smaller operators, if you are paying yourself and when you're doing that. And so that's a really important consideration. And I'll show you again, we'll look at that spreadsheet and see what it looks like if you include yourself as the owner-operator, being one of the laborers, one of the paid labor sources versus not. And so tracking that carefully really helps you determine some of your marketing costs, that's for sure.
Sorry, I'm talking out of turn.
Okay, absolutely.
This list of produce, is that reflected in what schools are appreciating?
Oh,
Is that kind of like
is that the spreadsheet?
Yeah, bell pepper, carrots, cucumbers, is that usually kind of a staple produce list that?
It actually just happens to be, I'm not sure if Mark
I'm
put
holding
that
off
into
there on
it.
purpose. It's a very short list too, just for simplicity. I mean, it could be many, many, many products long, but that's just too much for us to go over. So those are exactly products and then prices that were offered through the 2011-2012 bid process. So that's where I drew it from, and I'll show you the source.
But are these kind of like the top 4? If you, like consistently, what do you see that they're asking for in schools?
Julia, the standard products that you're going to find are, if you look at salad bar programs in schools, so you're looking at your cherry tomatoes, you're looking at your apple slices, you're looking at romaine lettuce, some specialty lettuce. They would love to get cut corn, but it's not always it's not easy because we don't have local processors that handle. We don't have local processors that actually processes fresh fruits and vegetables. At least we don't have enough of them. Let's just put it that way. So the standard products that the schools are going to buy are, if you look at a salad bar for raw ingredients, that's going to be very indicative. So shuck peas are going to be an item. Kids love those. Kids actually like the fresh peas more than the canned peas, believe it or not. They do. Some of the stuff that they like for center of the plate products, squash. We grow lots of squash, and they're starting to integrate squash into their meals because they've gone through the culinary boot camps and they started to understand how to utilize their tools in the kitchens and their facilities, and so they're incorporating ingredients that traditionally they've never had thought of that are locally sourced because now they've been trained to do it. Potatoes, onions, obviously are staples for schools, but we're also getting into areas, and I wish Krista Graham was here because she would tell you the story of what she did in Durango. She did a Thanksgiving meal for the community. She brought in rhubarb, she brought in rutabaga. I mean, how many kids do you know what rutabagas are? She brought in turnips, and she brought all these root vegetables and basically made a root vegetable medley, and everybody loved it, from the little kids all the way to the adults. And I think she got 5,000 pounds of root vegetables from all local farmers. So it's not always what they always menu, it's also things that they look at seasonally, because schools are starting to understand that dialogue between the agricultural counterparts that are educating them to say, look, you eat in season, and this is what's available in season. Some products are available longer, and some are not. And so schools are starting to identify with the seasonality of products, and that's what they're actually incorporating into their meals.
And I think there are other possibilities too. I didn't hear it mentioned earlier today, but also some schools are interested in, and institutions, hospitals, and universities are interested in whole grains, and they're looking to either make the investment in the milling or have it milled and then, so maybe contract out for the milling and then take it back. I mean, so you could say a top list, but then I think there's a lot of market opportunity there depending on the district and their kind of willingness to take
Along
that
those
risk.
lines, I don't know if it's been touched on, but is anyone buying quinoa, or are there quinoa producers?
You said quinoa?
Yeah, it's like really it grows well in Colorado. In certain areas.
Northern part of St. Louis Valley.
Some county.
Yeah, that's an ingredient, and this is part of school meals. When we talk about, even in the health institutions, in this country, we've done a very good job of not educating our consumers about what food really is, number one, but more importantly, what variety is there. So we have farmers that grow terrific product, but we have consumers who know nothing about it. So like, for example, quinoa, it's an ancient grain. It's been around for longer than, definitely iPods. It's been around for a long time. It's an ancient grain. It's extremely powerful in regards to nutritional value. Nobody knows what quinoa is. So when you talk about schools buying that kind of grain, there's an education gap.
Right.
So a lot of times in school meals, what's first is done is you introduce it in stages and you test it with the kids. Once you get the kids identifying with that product and they like it, that's where we start building the demand. I mean, I just told you the story about rutabagas. I mean, I don't know a lot of 8-year-olds who turn around and say, you know what, I really am craving roasted rutabagas. But now they understand what that is, and when they see it next time and they see it whole in the grocery store, they're not going to look at it and say the funny looking thing. They're going to remember how delicious it was. And so that's part of this struggle with school food, is that they have to really start at the ground level. But once they get over that, then it's a winning battle.
Martha, you want to walk folks through what you prepared, so you can make sure you hit all those points?
I will do that. Okay.
So
But
stand by,
thank you
she's
for
on the
the-
text piece right now.
But no, but I think it's good that we don't
Yeah,
stick to
absolutely.
it too, but it, brings up some good discussion. And so what I did in this budgeting exercise in terms of transportation, I looked at the difference between making your estimations based on kind of the standard 50 cents a mile type of cost versus really looking at wear and tear on a vehicle based on, not traveling, at higher speeds, carrying a lot of poundage. And I looked at other things like vehicle life and insurance depreciation, incorporated all those costs just to get a sense of what the costs, when you start looking at the deliveries you might be making, if you're going out a couple of times a week versus maybe 1 or 2 deliveries to an institutional purchaser, kind of depending on what the schedule is, that really impacts your total transportation costs. So if you were to look at all the different scenarios that I set up, what you see is that transportation is a much larger cost for some of those market outlets than for others. And certainly, if you're going to a longer haul farmer's market, it's going to cost you a lot more in transportation. Your labor costs are going to be higher. Some of the things that might not be as higher would be, look a little bit differently, might be some of the supplies once you have that investment, for example, in a farmer's market for tables and signs. Your packaging isn't going to cost as much as I think we'd heard earlier, buying all new wax boxes for every delivery to a farm to school program, if that's what the buyer is requesting or requiring. So those costs are going to be a lot higher. So when I did this, I incorporated the costs of new packaging for every delivery. Now that's not always the case, it depends on what you agreed upon with the purchaser, but it can be a really significant cost if you have to continually purchase new inputs like that. And I think the other thing, Karen, you mentioned is that it was an efficiency element, was labeling your boxes directly so that you don't have, did you want to speak to that?
Just having, if you're going to have to get customized boxes anyways, you might as well get the product names on those boxes so that you can just quickly mark them with a marker instead of having to then also create stickers to put on every box.
And could you talk about traceability just for a minute and some of the recurring costs associated with that in your operation?
Yeah, we just recently implemented a traceback program where we bought software, and that's actually going to be coming on board on this season. I don't know what you do on your farm, but up until now it's been handwritten ledgers and such, but we're of the feeling that we need to get on board with this because we see that traceability is going to be a huge issue from this point on. So we bought a traceback program. We'll be using that this year, and that will be able to trace from the seed to the end user for our product.
Is there a software product?
The one that we went was a Zebra software. It was the cheapest for what I could find for the moment, and it seems like it's going to do what we need it to do for our particular operation. And I'll be able to tell you about it next year. I'll let you know how it works. It's very intimidating. And sitting in the office right now, and every time I turn on my computer, it beeps at me, and I haven't used it yet.
So then she can't answer my next question, which is going to be, looking at the administrative costs involved in these different market channels. So for a farmer's market, there are traceability requirements, but for, selling to institutions, farm to school, farm to care facilities, you've got to have that traceability. So somebody's got to manage that system. You also have a lot more in terms of invoicing, which a lot of growers don't, have to deal with in a farmer's market. You should be checking your inventory. But, and if you're selling out of the farm stand, you should know what you're selling and what's going unsold so that you can better tune your production to your marketing. But, when you need a lot more administrative vehicles there to help you manage, and if that's accounting software, traceability software, all of those are added costs. Somebody's got to be managing that and monitoring it, because record keeping does you no good if you're not using it. If you're not entering data and then pulling reports out of it. It isn't serving its highest and best function. And then you've got different types of, you've got different labor rates for someone who is managing those types of tasks. So you have to figure that into your calculations. If your administrative costs are going to go up and you're going to be paying someone to do that, you definitely need to take that into consideration. Licensing fees, that structure changes too. And so, having a gap audit performed is a cost that you incur. And not to mention then, there are the sales tax and any business licensing. And one thing I thought that I'd call your attention to was a website that we put together, and this now works, kind of. Last year, we had a joint project with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and we put together this website that looks by stage of agricultural products, so raw ag products, value-added, prepared foods. What are the food safety and licensing regulatory requirements? And so we tried, this didn't work so well last time. The internet in here is very slow. Let's see if I can show you. So under whole, let's just go to numbers and see.
Since we got guys from Boulder, we got McDonald's, right?
Well, or we can go to berries. No, I'll show you. But anyway, so what we did is we have, define the product, talk about harvest, post-harvest food safety issues. And then if you look down here, you can click on distribution method. And so particularly if you're selling to an institution, here's all the licensing, labeling, any other requirements. And it's all in there, along with hyperlinks, so you can just go right to it for each product. And then in addition, what we did is we put on a lot of other resources, and some of those are grower specific, so of course everybody needs to read this. But then there's also some consumer information. If you're in a direct market setting, you can print out some handouts and just let people know, what your management practices are, what their management practices should be, how they should be handling the produce that you're selling. Because your contact time in some settings isn't very fast, and so if you hand them something, sometimes that's all you can squeeze in. And then just because it is the Melon page, we uploaded, put in links for the videos on shipping and handling, growing, handling, and shipping. After the listeria issue last year, we put those on, and I think we'll be doing more work in that area.
But this is a huge asset. Recognize it beforehand. All this information was scattered. It wasn't in one place. You go to these agencies and ask 3 times and get 3 different answers. So this is a huge.
And all the sales tax information, depending on where you're selling, the county, the municipality, if there are other taxes, and so that's all in here, and you can just kind of scroll through it, and it has links to the Department of Revenue and everything, and so it's all, we tried to make it as efficient as we could.
And that link is on your
It is.
page 3 of your resources.
Yeah. And then I think one of the last things to mention here is that I folded into these budgets is unsold product. And that could be too much product that you bring to market, product that gets damaged that you can't sell. Maybe you have maybe it's not too damaged, but it's just a little irregular, and you can find another channel. But I think that's an important cost to factor in. And if you've got, a longer haul destination, you might have more product loss than if you're only going a shorter distance. So that's kind of what's folded into these budgets. And the other thing that I'll show you, since we appear to have good connectivity, is, and if you look at your resource list on the back, I showed you Colorado Farm to Market. I wanted to show you Colorado Market Maker too, because this was mentioned earlier. And let's go. I wanted to show you, so say you're looking for let's see how quick this is now. But if you're looking for who is taking, who is purchasing from producers for farm to school programs, hopefully we'll be able to show you here. What we have is this new, and it'll work much better at your home, hopefully.
Okay.
So, and you just click on institutional, so that's who's in, it's all on that. What's that?
We've got some people on.
Yeah, we do have some
Got some
people.
districts.
So it's all, you know, it's all mapped, you can click on the districts and get to their specific information for their, you know, their buyers. So yeah, we've got now 6 districts in a pretty short period of time who have now entered their information. Let's just go take a look really quickly so we can see what.
You gotta get that Woodlow district in there.
Yeah, I
I
was looking.
registered earlier. I don't know.
So, and what we tell everybody, if you're a grower, if you're, you know, the school district, is to fill this out as completely as possible. So look at this. What you know is, you know, this can work for all different kinds of growers. They can pick up dry truck, refrigerated truck, got freezer capacity. This lets you know a lot about what your costs are going to be if you want to have a, you know, a relationship here with the Well-Sick School District. So just, it gives you a good way to do some really quick research. They have a lot of freezer capacity too. It doesn't say dry storage, but, and then you know, certification, okay, so GAP is necessary. So it gives you a lot of information right up front and saves you some time. So I will move on. Are there any questions about market maker since we're here? There is a whole webinar,
Yes, there's a webinar
too, which is extremely exciting.
We got 5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes? Okay, and we will move very quickly. I'll just point out that this is a simplified, obviously, these budgets, they look only at marketing costs, but what I did is I looked at the same volume of just a few products, so you can see those, but looked at price points that are very different. I want to show you where that price information comes from, because we spent a lot of time this past season.
You know, these spreadsheets are only printed on the front side, so if you want to tear them apart, you can lay them all out on a big ledger sheet and compare them.
Here we go. I wanted to show you all this, and the one area where we really would like to do this is in the Pueblo, Rocky Ford area. We collected price data. We did mostly farmers markets, and so we started in July, so we have July through November. So that's where the price data comes from, is it's actual price data that we collected. We have some other markets like Colorado Springs Farm and Art, Grand Junction, Palisade, Alamosa. We were able to get into the Alamosa market for a bit. For us, it was more of a staff limitation. We just didn't have the people to get out and do the market surveying, but we'd really like to look at fresh produce down in the Arkansas Valley too. And then the other market that I put on some farm to school bid price information, so you can look at that and just get a sense of what the prices were last year. And then our winter markets, and these are only up in Fort Collins, but this gives you a sense if you're doing season extension, what are the price points you might anticipate. Just gives you a sense as you're planning, maybe during the primary season, you'll be looking at those farm to school bid prices, and then, for those season extension times, you might be able to get some higher price points. The other thing, though, that this price data does is it gives you a reference point too. You're collecting all of your cost information, and so you can look at the bid prices and say, you know what, by the time I look at all my costs of getting it to you guys, I really can't do it for $1.95 a pound. And it gives you some leverage to say, this is the price I really can deliver with. And so, in a way, it gives you a little bit more information to help negotiate your bid prices too.
Did you guys see all those links on page 3 too? For this
Yeah.
same issue?
Thank you. And I just listed those out so you can see those. And, farther down, if you look farther down the page, if you really want to, are all of the weekly price reports, but those are all summarized in averages for each market. And so you can look at high, low, or median prices, kind of do sensitivity analysis. If you're looking at some direct markets, what if I'm only getting, basically the lower price, or, maybe sometimes the year I can expect to get the higher price. So it just gives you some planning information. And again, just kind of looking back at these budgets, what I really wanted to illustrate was just how different elements of your variable costs change depending on the market that you're looking at. I will be putting this online once I get it a little bit more, finalized. I've got instructions in it and everything, and hopefully it'll be pretty easy to just input your own data. The formulas are already in there, and just gives growers, a chance to experiment with how are the costs going to change depending on the market that I'm looking at. So, any questions, comments? I went real fast.
Good work, Brenda. Is your calculator, so your calculator's not online yet?
It is not.
Okay. Oh, where will it be when we do this?
I'll put it on this website.
On the same website?
Yeah, on this ABM website.
Okay.
And so there's a whole, this has, I'll just show you, this has a lot of other information. There are, once we get there, so there are some crop budgets for more conventional farming enterprises, custom rates information, a lot of other tools, and I'll be adding that as a decision tool onto this website.
Great.
So,
Would you ladies like to make some closing comments for scaling up considerations, takeaway points?
Takeaway. For me, it's been a great experience. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to get involved and give back to the community you live in, and I really encourage anyone who can get involved to do so.
I would agree with Sarah, and I think that any producer that has an opportunity to sell to the school districts, they should certainly follow that opportunity. It's the way of the future.
and could we wrap up kind of the way we did the last time? The last question was about the price points for farm to school being lower, and so what are the advantages?
Yeah, in my mind, the advantage is, while it might be a lower price point than, say, going to a farmer's market and getting that direct-to-market retail price, you've got a commitment for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 weeks for that product. So when you're planting your fields and you're planting your crops, you know that that product is already sold. And going to a farmer's market or even waiting for a chef to call to order something is kind of risky business. I'm not saying don't do it, but diversifying and having that farm-to-school relationship really is really beneficial. And honestly, I didn't see that I was taking too much lower, maybe pennies on the dollar of our wholesale price to begin with. So.
I really just agree with Karen. It's a great way to diversify. It's awesome to have it done on the off season and not have to worry about it during the busy peak season. So and with the bid, you really can, know that you can do it. You can do all the budgeting beforehand, so you can make it work.
Why don't we wrap up there? Help me thank our presenters.